Hello, my name's Elaine. I work in the communications team at Cerebra. And today I'm really pleased to be chatting to Claire Stoneman, who's a partner in the medical negligence team at Enable Law. And Claire's really going to be talking you through and giving some advice on what a typical journey might be if you need to take legal advice, and how to be, your child's voice and ask questions when you don't know what to ask. So before I go any further, I'm just going to say welcome to Claire. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Just ask if you can say you and your role, your experience. Just over to you.
Yeah, sure. So at Enable Law, we specialise in, as you said, medical negligence claims. So that's when there's been some negligent medical treatment, which leads to mistakes being made and a serious injury, such as a brain injury. We also specialise in serious personal injury. So that could be an accident, a car accident, or an accident at work, an accident at school, or in a public place. And then we also have at Enable Law a court of protection team. So they help people who don't have capacity and aren't therefore able to make their own decisions. So we have 7 offices. Trying to remember exactly where they are now. Let's go through a map in my head. So London, Bristol, Southampton, Taunton, Exeter, Plymouth and Truro. But we work with clients wherever they are throughout England and Wales. And we have about 130 people in Enable Law who all work with helping families with their claims. So we speak to a lot of different people who've been hurt in many different ways, but we particularly help parents and families whose children have suffered a brain injury. Quite often that's an injury that's occurred during birth or shortly after delivery. And lots of our clients have cerebral palsy as a result. And we also work with a lot of children who have a spinal injury from an accident, and therefore they're disabled. So how did I end up working in this area of law, you might want to know? So I qualified as a lawyer in 1998, which is just so scary because that's 23 years ago. If I say it quickly, it's not quite so bad.
It doesn't seem that long though, does it? I always think. It's only when you add up the years.
Yeah, I can't quite believe it. But so all those years ago when I was a trainee solicitor, so in my early 20s, I worked on the Bristol Royal Infirmary inquiry into the babies who died following or been seriously brain injured following paediatric cardiac surgery. So really from the very start of my career, I've worked with children with brain injury. So that led me into this line of work, and I really enjoyed working with families and children and helping people. That's what it's all about. People who do this type of work, we are people. We like helping people, and also we find the medical side of things fascinating as well. I think we're all probably would have loved to have been doctors, but we ended up going down the legal path. So I, as I said, I specialize in the medical negligence side, and I lead a team of lawyers who also do that, and specializing in particular working with babies and children with a brain or spinal injury. So yeah, I'm also a trustee of Headway Somerset. So that's working with adults with a brain injury. Sadly, I've got 3 members of my family who have serious brain injury. So I know firsthand the challenges it can bring and the emotions, how difficult a journey it is. So that's a bit about me and Enable Law.
Oh, thank you. And you said, about being a people person and in your experience, in your family, because you're dealing with families who come to you at a very vulnerable and difficult time in their lives, aren't you? They've you know, this thing has occurred, terrible thing has occurred, you know, they're dealing with shock, with trauma, with grief, a whole range of emotions. And I can only imagine that it must be really difficult then to start perhaps a legal process where you're struggling to deal with everything. And I know you've written a great article for Cerebra's website, taking people through a typical journey when perhaps they turn to legal advice. So that's really sort of the thrust of this interview and the article. So I just wondered if we could start by you explaining what is the first thing that a family or parents, carers would need to do if they find themselves in this awful circumstance. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing really is to pick up the phone, send an email to a lawyer who specialises in this area, and it must be so daunting. Quite often families have not ever had to get legal advice. They might have made a will, but they haven't really had any contact with a lawyer. And we are, I mean, our whole way of dealing with cases is we are friendly, we are approachable, we will help you, we will hold your hand, we will guide you through the process. Litigation is stressful. It is a stressful process, but our aim is to take away that stress, to work with you, to guide you. We'll be guided by the family as well as to how they want to work. Some people prefer to deal by email, for example, and some people will prefer that an email is only sent to a certain member of the family. We will be guided by the family. It's really important that you establish a good relationship with the family from the outset, because you will be working together for a period of time, and that's really important, that you're comfortable with each other and you know what each other want. So that's the first step, is making that initial approach and having that conversation, and we don't underestimate how difficult that is, and we know the questions that we need to ask you. It's, you know, we'll help you and we'll get the information that we need to start the process. Quite a common question at the outset is about funding, because that's scary, the thought of contacting a lawyer and how much am I going to have to pay. Well, at Enable Law we'll offer a no win no fee agreement, so quite often a lot of cases they're dealt with on that basis. And also legal aid is available in certain circumstances still, and that's if a child has suffered a severe neurological injury up to 8 weeks following delivery. So in the antenatal period, during delivery, and up to 8 weeks thereafter, legal aid is still available. So it's not going to, the family aren't going to be out of pocket as a result of obtaining initial advice. And certainly we are more than happy to have an initial no obligation chat just to talk through what's happened with the family. So it's difficult for them.
But reassuring to say, I can only imagine, but for families to have somebody there who understands the process, so they don't have to worry about that side of things.
No, absolutely.
Okay. And then at some point, I think I'm right, that expert evidence will come into play in the process. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we have to get a copy of all of the medical records. So the child's medical records and mum's medical records, if it's an issue about the pregnancy and the delivery. So we get all of those records and we take a full statement from the family about what's happened. And then all of that is sent to an independent medical expert. So whilst I've been doing this work for many years, I am not a doctor, I'm not a midwife, I'm not an obstetrician. And what the court needs is an independent expert to advise on the standard of care that's been provided. So if we're looking at potentially a mistake by a midwife or an obstetrician, we'd need to get an independent midwife or an obstetrician to review all the notes and provide their opinion. So what they have to look at is whether or not there's been a breach of duty. So they have to look at the care that was provided and whether that was substandard. And if they're able to show that it was, if their opinion is that it was substandard, then we also have to show that it's that negligent care that has caused the child's injury. So it's not enough that there's a breach of duty. You have to have breach of duty and causation. So we have to go to a number of experts in these serious injury cases. So we will have to go to a pediatric neurologist, a neuroradiologist, quite often a neonatologist. There's a number of experts involved, but we do all of that for the family. We've worked with experts for a number of years, so we know the experts to approach, and we provide all the information to the experts, and then they provide their opinion. And we share all of that information with the family, and we take them through all of the medical evidence, all the legal evidence, and explain all that to them. And then once we've got all that evidence, we then prepare what's called a letter of claim, and that sets out the whole case, and that goes to the defendant. And the defendant then has 4 months to provide their response. And then what happens next depends on the response. So if the defendant makes admissions and says, yes, we're really sorry, the care provided was substandard and this has caused your child's injury, then we can ask for an interim payment of damages. So at that point, we can get some money to help the family. And usually the thing that is most needed is some care for the child, some help with caring for the child, some therapy, adaptations to their property, and we can get that money to help them at that stage. If the defendant denies and denies all liability, then we have to go through a formal court process, and there are various steps in that. So that's what happens next, and we then have to investigate the impact that the injury has had upon the child. So we have to then get a whole other arena of experts to meet with the child and assess the child, assess their condition and what's going to happen in the future. So we'll be looking at what care they need. We'll be looking at, is their accommodation suitable? We'll be looking at physiotherapy, speech and language therapy, educational psychology, all a whole range of experts to draw a picture of what that child needs now and for the rest of their life. And with that, we'll then work out what the financial value of the case is. And we put together this detailed document setting out to the last penny how much money is needed to look after that child for the rest of their life. Yes, so that's the next stage in the process.
So potentially it can take some time, I'm assuming, depending on how, as you say, whether people accept liability or whatever. So it can be quite a long, drawn-out process for families. Yeah,
I would say, I mean, it can be a long process, but quite often it needs to be. So if you have a family who contacts you when the child is very, very young, you're not going to know what that child's needs are until a bit later in their life. So
that's true.
So you do need to wait to see how they develop. So there can be periods of time where we're just waiting for the child to get older and develop. And during that period of time, if we've got an admission of liability, we can get some money to help the family in the meantime, to put care in place, to put therapies in place, to have a case manager who's going to help them organising all these medical appointments and all the EHCP at school. It's really, really important, because obviously through their education, they're going through a crucial time in their development. So the quicker you can get an interim payment, get some money, the quicker you can put in all these measures to help the child. And the main aim is to enable that child to achieve the maximum that they can.
Yes.
you know, and to ensure that they have a happy, fulfilled life. And that is just a beautiful thing to see when you're working with a family and you can see the difference that you've made to that child's life. It's lovely. And that's why we do what we do.
Now, I've often heard of the term deputyship and court of protection, is it? But I'm not really familiar with what they mean. So can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah. So these cases, so from what I've been saying, it's quite obvious that these cases are quite often multi-million pound cases. So they're involving a lot of money because you're talking about caring for a child in every aspect for the rest of their life. So the court of protection for any child or for anyone who doesn't have capacity to make decisions, the court of protection is there and needs to approve any financial settlement. They're there to, it's the clues in the name, they're there to protect the child. So they approve any settlement. And what the court will do is they will appoint a deputy. So this is somebody who deals with that child's property and affairs. So, and they, in these big cases, the court will appoint usually a professional deputy. So that's usually a solicitor. And we have a team at Enable Law who specialise in acting as professional deputies. So what the deputy does is ensures that the child's money is spent appropriately and that it's budgeted so that the money lasts for the whole of their life. Yeah. And the professional deputy is accountable to the court of protection. So the child is always protected. The decisions are always made in that child's best interests, and the deputy works with the family and the child to draw up a plan of what the child needs. So that might be through their education. It might be that they've got some hobbies, some sports that they want to do, and we can purchase some specialist equipment to help them to achieve their full potential. Their house might not be suitable for a wheelchair, for example, so the deputy will work with the family to find a suitable alternative accommodation and buy that and adapt that. They'll set up therapies, physio, speech and language. A child might need some psychology input. There might be a lot of work on the EHCP, and the deputy will very much liaising with the family, working with the family to work out what the child needs and put all of that in place. So they do a lot.
I was going to say that's a busy role, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's all about representing the child, working with the family, working with all the various therapists and a case manager as well, to make sure that child is able to achieve their full potential and is cared for the rest of their life. And that whenever we settle a claim, that is the thing that is such a reassurance to families, to know that their child is always going to be looked after for the rest of their life. And that's a massive relief, I think, in most cases.
Yes. And as you say, allowing the child as well to develop to their full potential and, enjoy life, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And everything we've chatted about today, Claire, is expanded on in that article on our website, isn't it? With lots of good advice for parents. But is there anything you'd like to add today? Is there any sort of pieces of advice that you'd like to pass on, or some reassurance to anybody finding themselves in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, if you have questions, if you are concerned about any aspect of the treatment that mum has received or the child has received after being delivered, then just pick up the phone, send an email, just explore it. No question is a stupid question. We're here, we're happy to help, we're happy to talk to you. And it may be that there isn't a claim, but at least you've taken that step and you found out. And if there is a claim, then we can help you, and we are here to help you. We want to help you and work with you to ensure that your child has everything they need financially for the rest of their life.
Oh, thank you ever so much for that, Claire. It's been really good to talk to you today. We'll make sure we post the link to the article alongside this video. So there's lots more there for parents and carers to have a read of and take it further if they'd like to. So thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And all the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.